The sound of the scanner slamming down echoed through the store like a gunshot. "I said no, I will not serve you." The cashier's voice was sharp, loud, and dripping with contempt, cutting through the hum of the crowded supermarket. Heads turned instantly. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A child's laughter died in his throat. Standing on the other side of the counter was a young black woman, frozen in place, her hands trembling as she clutched a small basket with just 3 items inside. A loaf of bread, carton of milk, a box of medicine. Her eyes were wide, glossy with unshed tears. I have the money," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the buzzing lights. I just need to pay." The cashier laughed, not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one, a cruel one. "Money," he scoffed, leaning back in his chair, crossing his arms slowly like a king passing judgment. "People like you always say that." A murmur rippled through the line behind her. Some customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked away, pretending to check their phones. Others raised their devices openly, red recording lights blinking as the moment unfolded. No one stepped forward. The woman swallowed hard. Her shoulders curled inward as if she were trying to disappear inside her own skin. "Sir, please," she whispered. "My mother is sick. I don't have time." "Don't play that card with me," the cashier snapped, slamming his palm against the counter. "I know your type. You come in here, waste our time, try to scam us, and then cry when you get caught." Her face burned. Every word felt like a slap. "I'm not trying to scam anyone," she said, her voice cracking now. "I just need to—" "Enough," he barked. The entire front of the store fell silent. "Either you leave right now," he said, pointing toward the exit with sharp, aggressive force, "or I call security and have you dragged out." A collective gasp moved through the crowd. Dragged out. The woman's lips trembled. She looked down at her basket, then back up at him, eyes full of shame and desperation. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said, barely louder than a breath. The cashier leaned forward, his face inches from hers. "You existing here is wrong," he said coldly. That was it. Her knees buckled slightly. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." Another voice muttered, "This is messed up." A phone camera zoomed in closer. Still, no one intervened. The woman's eyes darted around the store, searching for a single kind face. A single voice willing to say, "Stop." She found none. Her chest tightened. Her breathing became shallow. Tears finally spilled over, sliding silently down her cheeks as she clutched the edge of the counter to steady herself. "I just want to pay," she whispered again. The cashier rolled his eyes dramatically. "Unbelievable," he said loudly, turning to the people behind her. "This is why lines get slow, because of this nonsense." He looked back at her with open disgust. "Move now." For a moment, she didn't move at all. It wasn't defiance. It was shock. Shock that this was happening. Shock that no one was stopping it. Shock that dignity could be stripped away so quickly, so publicly. Her hands shook as she slowly lowered the basket onto the counter. The box of medicine slid slightly, making a soft tapping sound. The cashier glanced at it, then sneered. "You probably can't even pronounce what's in that box," he said. "Much less pay for it." A sharp intake of breath came from somewhere in the crowd. The woman closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something inside her had cracked. "I'm sorry," she said. 2 words, heavy, broken, unnecessary. She bowed her head in apology for being there, for breathing, for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's when it happened. From the back of the store, between the tall aisles stacked with polished shelves and glowing brand names, a man stopped walking. He had been watching. He had seen everything. The way the cashier smirked, the way the woman shrank, the way the crowd stayed silent. His jaw tightened. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped out from behind the aisle. No one noticed him yet, not the cashier, not the woman, not the people filming, but something about his presence felt different. He stood tall, dressed simply, but with a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. His eyes never left the scene at the counter, not once. As the woman reached for her basket, preparing to walk away in defeat, the man took another step forward. Then another, and another. The cashier scoffed one last time. "Next customer," he called out loudly, already dismissing her like she was nothing. But just before she could turn away, the man stopped, right behind her, and he spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but with a calm certainty that sliced through the noise like a blade. "Is there a reason," he said slowly, "you're refusing to serve her?" The cashier froze. The woman froze. The entire store froze. "Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged, humiliated, or denied respect simply because of how you looked, where you came from, or what someone assumed about you? Tell us your story in the comments. And let us know, where are you watching from today? Because what happens next, no one in that store was ready for. That man standing behind her. He wasn't just another customer. And the truth about who he really was about to change everything. Let's go back to how this story truly began this morning. The day had begun long before the sun rose. A soft gray light crept through the cracked window of a small, aging apartment on the east side of the city, illuminating peeling paint and threadbare curtains that had once been bright yellow. The walls carried the quiet weight of years, years of struggle, patience, and survival. Her name was Aaliyah Carter. She was 26 years old, though life had etched lines of responsibility into her face that made her seem older to those who looked closely. Her beauty wasn't loud or polished. It was gentle, understated. Warm brown skin, kind eyes that carried both exhaustion and hope. Hair pulled back neatly, not for fashion but practicality. Aaliyah sat on the edge of her narrow bed, rubbing sleep from her eyes as the alarm on her phone buzzed weakly beside her. The screen was cracked, the sound distorted, but it worked, and that was enough. She reached over and silenced it quickly. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay." The room was quiet but not peaceful. From the other side of the thin wall came the sound of coughing. Aaliyah's body stiffened instantly. She was on her feet in seconds. "Mama," she called softly as she crossed the room. In the tiny bedroom next door, her mother, Evelyn Carter, lay propped up on pillows, her breathing shallow, her chest rising and falling unevenly. A faded blanket was pulled up to her shoulders, and a small plastic fan hummed nearby, pushing warm air around the room. "I'm here," Aaliyah said gently, kneeling beside the bed. She reached for her mother's hand, rubbing it slowly between her palms to warm it. "I didn't mean to sleep so long." Evelyn opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "You always apologize for things that aren't your fault," she murmured. Aaliyah smiled back, though worry tightened her chest. Evelyn had been sick for years now, diabetes, heart issues, complications that never seemed to end. Medication kept her stable, but without it, Aaliyah didn't allow herself to finish that thought. "I'll make you some tea," Aaliyah said, "and oatmeal just like you like it." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "You're a good daughter." Those words mattered more to Aaliyah than anything else in the world. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely wide enough for one person, and a living room that doubled as storage space. But it was clean. Everything had its place. Aaliyah made sure of that. She moved quietly through the kitchen, boiling water, stirring oatmeal, measuring out the last of the sugar with careful precision. Every ounce mattered. Every dollar mattered. As she worked, her eyes drifted to the refrigerator door. Taped there, held up by a magnet shaped like a sunflower, was a folded piece of paper. She knew what it said. She didn't need to open it again. Final notice. 2 words that had been haunting her for weeks. Rent overdue, utilities behind, one more missed payment, and they were out. Aaliyah swallowed hard and turned away. She carried the tray into her mother's room, helping her sit up, spoon feeding her slowly, patiently. Each small act was done with care, with love, the kind of love that didn't expect recognition. "Did you sleep?" Evelyn asked between bites. "A little," Aaliyah lied. In truth, she'd barely slept at all. Her mind had been racing, numbers, deadlines, impossible choices. She worked 2 jobs, cleaned offices at night, stocked shelves early mornings when she could get the shifts. Still, it was never enough, not with hospital bills, not with medication costs, not with rent climbing higher every year. After breakfast, Aaliyah helped her mother take her morning pills. She noticed immediately what she already feared. The bottle was almost empty. Her heart sank. She turned it slowly, counting. 2 pills left. 2. "Mama," she said softly, forcing calm into her voice. "I'm going to run out for a bit. I'll be back soon, okay?" Evelyn studied her face. She knew that look. Mothers always did. "Don't push yourself too hard," she said. "We'll be okay." Aaliyah smiled, though her eyes stung. "I promise." In the bathroom, Aaliyah splashed water on her face, staring at her reflection. She didn't see weakness. She saw determination. She saw someone who refused to give up even when the world made it hard to breathe. She pulled on her cleanest jeans and a simple blouse, smoothing it down carefully. She brushed her hair, applied a thin layer of lip balm, small acts of dignity that helped her feel human. Before leaving, she knelt by her mother's bed. "I'll be back soon," she said again, kissing her forehead. As she stepped outside, the neighborhood greeted her with its familiar sounds. Buses groaning down cracked streets, children laughing somewhere in the distance, a siren wailing far away. The buildings were old, paint-chipped, brick-stained by time and neglect, but this was home, a place filled with people who struggled quietly just like she did. As she walked, Aaliyah held her bag close to her side. Inside it was everything she had left, cash she'd saved dollar by dollar, loose change, hope. She didn't know how the day would end, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would do whatever it took to take care of her mother, even if it meant swallowing her pride. even if it meant stepping into places where she wasn't welcome, even if it meant risking humiliation. Because love, real love, was stronger than fear, and that love was about to be tested in ways she never could have imagined. By the time Aaliyah reached the end of her street, the weight in her chest had grown heavier. Every step felt deliberate, measured, like if she walked too fast, reality might catch up to her. If she walked too slow, time would run out. She stopped at the corner and reached into her bag. Carefully, she emptied its contents into her palm, a few crumpled bills, a handful of coins, not even enough to fill her hand. She counted once. Then again, her throat tightened. It was still short, not by a little, by a lot. Aaliyah closed her eyes and exhaled shakily. 2 pills left. That number echoed in her mind like a ticking clock. Her mother's prescription wasn't optional. Missing doses didn't mean discomfort, it meant risk. It meant hospitalization. It meant something far worse that Aaliyah refused to name. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Tanya, coworker, already loaned her money last month. Mr. Reeves, landlord, already threatening eviction. Clinic office, voicemail full, no extensions. Charity hotline, hours limited. Appointment weeks away. One by one, hope flickered and died. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal pole of a bus stop and let herself cry for exactly 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then she wiped her face. Crying didn't solve anything. She needed solutions. She needed money. She needed mercy. The pharmacy near her apartment had turned her away 2 days ago. No insurance, no payment plan, no exceptions. But there was one place left, a place she'd been avoiding, a place that felt intimidating. Brightmart, the largest grocery and pharmacy chain in the city. Clean, modern, expensive, known for smiling employees and shiny floors and for quietly judging those who didn't belong. Aaliyah had never liked going there, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because of the looks. The way security guards followed her down aisles, the way cashiers spoke slower, louder, like she couldn't understand, the way kindness always felt conditional. Still, Brightmart had a pharmacy, and sometimes they helped. She checked the time. 10:47 a.m. Her mother's next dose was due by noon. Her heart began to race. "I don't have a choice," she whispered. She boarded the bus, sitting near the back, gripping her bag tightly as the city rolled past her window. Luxury buildings replaced rundown blocks. Designer storefronts appeared. Streets grew cleaner. With every stop, Aaliyah felt more out of place. She stared at her reflection in the glass. Do I look poor? Do they already know? She hated those thoughts. Hated that the world had taught her to think them. The bus finally hissed to a stop. Brightmart stood before her like a palace of glass and steel. Automatic doors, polished signs, perfectly trimmed plants. She hesitated on the sidewalk. Her legs felt heavy. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She thought of her mother's weak smile that morning, her labored breathing, the way her hand felt colder than usual. Aaliyah squared her shoulders. "I can do this," she whispered. Inside, the store buzzed with activity. Carts rolled smoothly over spotless floors. Shelves overflowed with abundance. The air smelled faintly of baked bread and expensive coffee. Aaliyah walked carefully, conscious of every step. She headed straight for the pharmacy counter. A woman in a crisp uniform glanced at her, eyes flicking from Aaliyah's face to her clothes, then back again. "Next," the woman said flatly. Aaliyah stepped forward. "Hi," she said politely. "I need to refill a prescription. I don't have insurance, but I can pay part today." "Is there?" The woman didn't even look at the computer. "We don't do partial payments," she said. "I understand," Aaliyah replied quickly. "But this is urgent. It's for my mother. She—" "Then you should have planned better," the woman interrupted. Aaliyah flinched. "I'm trying," she said softly. "Please, is there any kind of—" "No," the woman said sharply. "Next." Aaliyah stood there for a moment, stunned. The line behind her shifted impatiently. Someone sighed loudly. She stepped away slowly, heart pounding. She leaned against a shelf, trying to steady herself. Think, she told herself. Think. That's when she saw it. The small pharmacy inside Brightmart, the one near the front registers. Sometimes medications there were cheaper, sometimes. Her hands shook as she picked up the box, her mother's medication. The price tag made her stomach drop. She was still short, but not as short. If she skipped food, if she used everything, it might work. Aaliyah nodded to herself. "I'll figure it out," she whispered. Placed the box in her basket. Then she added bread, milk, simple things, essentials. At the checkout line, she rehearsed her words over and over. Be calm, be polite, don't cry. Her turn came. The cashier barely glanced at her before his expression changed. His eyes hardened, his mouth twisted. And the moment she placed her basket on the counter, everything went wrong. As his voice rose, as his insults cut deep, as the crowd watched and recorded, Aaliyah felt something inside her begin to collapse. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about dignity. This was about survival. And as she stood there being stripped of both in front of strangers, she realized something terrifying. If she walked out without that medicine, she didn't know what would happen next. And that fear, that desperation, was about to push her into the most painful moment of her life. Before the humiliation, before the shouting, before the crowd turned her into a spectacle, there was the walk. The long, quiet journey that carried Aaliyah from the safety of her small apartment to the gleaming entrance of Brightmart. It was a walk filled with fear and hope. They moved side by side, each step heavier than the last. The bus ride had ended 3 blocks away, forcing her to walk the rest of the distance. The sidewalk beneath her shoes felt unfamiliar, smoother, cleaner, bordered by manicured hedges and sleek storefronts with tinted glass. Everything here whispered money. Aaliyah adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, feeling suddenly exposed. Every passing car felt like it was slowing down to look at her. Every well-dressed shopper felt like a silent judge. She kept her eyes forward. Just get in. Just get what you need. Just get out. That was the plan, but plans were fragile things. Her mind wandered as she walked, to her childhood, to nights when her mother worked double shifts and still came home smiling. To the way Evelyn had once said, "We might not have much, but we have each other." That promise had carried Aaliyah through years of struggle. Now it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She stopped walking. For a split second, hope surged. Maybe someone had called back. Maybe there was another way. She pulled it out. A text message. Utility company, final disconnection notice. Payment required by end of day. Her shoulders sagged. "Of course," she murmured. She slid the phone back into her pocket and resumed walking. The closer she got, the louder her thoughts became. What if they say no? What if they laugh? What if I lose control and cry? She hated crying in public. It made people uncomfortable. It made them impatient. It made them cruel. She crossed the street and Brightmart came fully into view. The automatic doors glided open and closed, welcoming shoppers with cheerful chimes. It looked inviting. And that somehow made it worse. She stopped at the curb. Her heart pounded. Inside her bag, her fingers brushed against the folded prescription slip. She imagined her mother waiting, counting pills, trying not to worry. Aaliyah inhaled deeply, in through her nose, out through her mouth. She straightened her back, lifted her chin. "You belong here," she told herself. "You have the right to ask for help." The words felt hollow. As she approached the entrance, she caught her reflection in the glass. She looked tired, not broken, not weak, just tired. A security guard stood near the door, arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd. When his gaze landed on her, it lingered a moment longer than necessary. Her stomach tightened. She stepped inside anyway. Cool air washed over her skin. Bright lights flooded her vision. The contrast was jarring. Everything inside felt louder, sharper, faster. People moved with purpose, carts full, conversations casual and carefree. Aaliyah felt like an intruder in someone else's world. She moved cautiously through the aisles, avoiding eye contact, pretending to browse while her heart raced. She passed displays of expensive snacks, organic produce, glossy magazines featuring perfect lives she could never afford. Everywhere she looked, abundance screamed, and it reminded her of everything she lacked. At the pharmacy counter, she hesitated. The woman behind the desk didn't smile. Aaliyah's voice shook as she spoke, but she kept her words polite, respectful. She was dismissed without hesitation. Without empathy, without care. That rejection stung, but it wasn't new. She felt it before many times, so she swallowed it and moved on. That was the thing about Aaliyah. She bent. She didn't break, not yet. She found the medicine in the aisle near the front. The box felt heavier than it should have when she picked it up. This small object held so much power. Life, time, hope. She checked the price again, doing the math in her head. If she used everything she had, it might work. Her hands trembled as she placed it in her basket. Bread, milk, nothing more. She walked toward the registers, her steps slowed with every foot closer. The checkout lanes were busy. Aaliyah scanned the cashier's faces, instinctively choosing the one who looked the least impatient. That was a mistake. She stepped into line. The man behind the register glanced at her and something in his eyes shifted. Disapproval, suspicion, judgment. Her heart sank. Please don't, she thought. Not today. As she waited, she rehearsed her words again. "I have the money. I just need to pay. I can explain." Her turn came. She placed her basket on the counter carefully, as if any sudden movement might trigger something terrible. The cashier scanned the items slowly, too slowly. He stopped, looked at the medicine, then at her. And then he didn't scan it. He pushed it back. That single gesture told her everything. Fear surged. This wasn't just about policy. This was personal. Aaliyah opened her mouth to speak, to explain, to beg if she had to. But before she could say a word, the cashier's voice cut through the air. Loud, cold, public. and with that first cruel sentence, the fragile balance between fear and hope shattered completely. Aaliyah stood there at the edge of the moment that would change her life forever, unaware that someone else just a few aisles away had already noticed her and was watching. The cashier didn't even pretend to hide his irritation. He stared at the medicine box like it offended him, then slowly pushed it back across the counter with 2 fingers as if it were dirty. "You can't buy this," he said flatly. Aaliyah blinked. "I what?" He looked up at her now, really looked. His eyes traveled from her worn shoes to her modest clothes, then back to her face. The judgment was immediate, calculated. "You heard me," he said louder. "This item isn't for you." A flush crept up Aaliyah's neck. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "It's over the counter. I have the money. I just want to pay." The cashier let out a sharp laugh that turned heads. "Right, and I'm supposed to believe that," he said, shaking his head. "Because every day it's the same story. Someone comes in, fills a basket, then suddenly, oh, no money." Aaliyah's fingers curled around the edge of the counter. "I'm not doing that," she said. "Please don't assume." "Assume," he interrupted, his voice rising. "I don't need to assume anything. I can tell." A woman in the next lane glanced over, then quickly looked away. The cashier leaned back in his chair, folding his arms slowly, deliberately, like he was settling in for entertainment. "Do us both a favor," he said. "Put the medicine back and leave." Aaliyah's heart slammed against her ribs. "I can't," she said, her voice shaking now. "My mother needs it. She's sick. She only has 2 pills left." The words spilled out before she could stop them. A mistake. The cashier's expression hardened. "Oh, here we go," he said loudly. "The sob story." A ripple of discomfort moved through the line. Someone whispered, "That's harsh." Another muttered, "Why is he yelling?" Still, no one stepped in. "I'm not lying," Aaliyah said, fighting tears. "I wouldn't be here if I had another option." The cashier's smile was thin and cruel. "Funny how it's always an emergency," he said. "Funny how it's always someone else's fault." He leaned forward, lowering his voice just enough to make it more threatening. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you." The words hit like a punch. Aaliyah stiffened. "You people," she repeated quietly. He didn't correct himself. Instead, he raised his voice again, making sure everyone could hear. "I'm not risking my job because you want to play games," he said. "So either you pay right now every cent or you get out of my line." "I'm trying to pay," she said desperately. "Please, just scan it." She reached for her bag, pulling out the crumpled bills and coins, placing them on the counter with shaking hands. The cashier didn't even look. "I said move," he snapped. Aaliyah froze. The silence around them grew heavier. Phones were fully raised now. A man near the soda display murmured, "This is uncomfortable." But uncomfortable wasn't enough to make anyone act. "Sir," Aaliyah said, her voice breaking, "I'm begging you, just this once." The cashier slammed his hand on the counter. "Don't beg me," he barked. "I don't care about your problems. You're holding up the line." He pointed toward the exit. "Get out." The word echoed. Aaliyah felt her legs weaken, her ears rang, her vision blurred. She looked behind her at the line of strangers. Some avoided her gaze, some watched with curiosity, some filmed without shame. No one spoke up. She turned back to the cashier. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said, barely audible. The cashier snorted. "Standing here wasting everyone's time is wrong," he said. "And frankly, you don't belong in this store." That sentence cut deeper than all the others. Didn't belong. Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she whispered, "I'm sorry." The cashier smirked. "Finally," he said, "some sense." He grabbed the basket and yanked it toward himself, removing the medicine and setting it aside. "This stays," he said. "You can take the rest if you can afford it." Aaliyah stared at the empty space where the medicine had been. Her mother's medicine, gone, her chest tightened painfully. "I need that," she said, tears streaming now. "Please." The cashier rolled his eyes. "Security," he called out loudly. "I've got a problem customer." That word problem felt like a verdict. Aaliyah's shoulders shook as she tried to speak, but no sound came out. The humiliation was complete, public, loud, unfair, and still no one moved, no one defended her. The cruelty continued unchecked as the crowd chose silence over humanity. And Aaliyah, standing alone at the counter, felt smaller than she ever had in her life. The word security hung in the air like a threat. Aaliyah felt her knees tremble. She had done nothing wrong, yet every eye in the store made her feel like a criminal. She could feel the heat of their stares on her skin, curious, judgmental, detached. The phones were still raised, red dots blinking, capturing her pain from angles she couldn't escape. Her chest rose and fell too fast. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, though she didn't know who she was apologizing to anymore. The cashier scoffed. "Unbelievable," he muttered, shaking his head dramatically. "Always the same." Aaliyah's fingers dug into her palms, nails biting into skin as if pain might keep her grounded. Say something, she told herself, stand up, but the words wouldn't come. Her throat felt closed, tight, like the world had wrapped its hands around her voice and squeezed. She looked around one last time, at the elderly woman in line who met her gaze briefly, then looked away. At the man filming who shifted for a better angle, at the mother holding her child closer, whispering something under her breath. No help, no defense, just silence, and that silence hurt more than every insult. Aaliyah bowed her head, her shoulders shook as tears dripped onto the counter, darkening the polished surface. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said quietly. I'll go. The cashier smirked, satisfied. Good choice, he said. Next time don't come in if you can't afford to shop. Those words shattered what little strength she had left. Her breath hitched, her heart pounded painfully. I failed, she thought, not just here. At home, her mother was counting on her, and she was about to return empty-handed. She reached for the basket, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. The bread slid. The milk wobbled dangerously close to the edge. Her entire body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled just for her. As she turned slightly toward the exit, she caught her reflection in the glossy surface of the freezer doors. Red eyes, tear-streaked face. A woman stripped of dignity in front of strangers. She barely recognized herself. A security guard approached, his footsteps slow and deliberate. Ma'am, he said, not unkindly but firmly. You need to move. Aaliyah nodded quickly. I'm leaving, she said, voice barely above a whisper. She took one step, then another. Every step toward the exit felt like a walk of shame. Her vision blurred again. I can't go home like this, she thought. I can't look her in the eyes. She paused near the door. Her chest tightened violently. She pressed a hand over her heart, breathing shallowly. For a brief, terrifying moment, she thought she might collapse right there on the floor. The world felt too big, too cruel, too indifferent. Just breathe, she whispered to herself. Inside her bag, her phone vibrated. She didn't check it. She already knew it wouldn't be good news. As she reached for the handle of the exit door, her fingers brushed the cold metal. This was it, defeat. The moment when she accepted that she had nothing left to fight with. She squeezed her eyes shut. I tried, she told herself. I really tried. That's when a voice spoke from behind her, not loud, not angry, just calm. Excuse me. Aaliyah froze. The cashier rolled his eyes again. What now? He snapped, not even looking. I believe, the voice continued evenly, there's been a mistake. Aaliyah turned slowly. She saw a man stepping forward from the crowd. He was tall, dressed simply in a dark jacket and jeans, his hair neatly combed, his expression composed. His eyes weren't cold or judgmental. They were kind and focused. He wasn't looking at the cashier. He was looking at her. Are you okay? He asked gently. The question caught Aaliyah off guard. No one had asked her that, not once. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The cashier laughed dismissively. Mind your business, he said. This doesn't concern you. The man didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch. I disagree, he said calmly, because what's happening here is wrong. A ripple of tension spread through the store. The cashier sneered. And who do you think you are? He said. The man's gaze shifted slowly to him, someone who had seen enough. The air felt different now, like something had shifted, subtly but unmistakably. Aaliyah felt it too. For the first time since she walked into the store, she didn't feel completely alone, and though she didn't know it yet, this was the moment everything began to change. The man took another step forward, not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough to place himself between Aaliyah and the cashier. It was a small movement, but it changed the entire energy of the space. Aaliyah looked up at him, her eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. She wasn't used to anyone stepping in. Not like this, not for her. I asked if you're okay, the man repeated gently, lowering his voice so only she could hear. She swallowed hard. I don't know, she said honestly. I just wanted to buy medicine for my mother. Her voice cracked again. The man nodded slowly, like he understood far more than she was saying. That's all you wanted? He asked. She nodded. Behind them, the cashier scoffed loudly. Oh, come on, he said, waving a dismissive hand. Don't fall for it. She's been causing problems since she got here. The man turned toward the cashier at last. His expression didn't change. No anger, no outrage, just quiet authority. From what I observed, he said evenly, she placed legal items on the counter and attempted to pay. That's not causing problems. The cashier straightened in his chair, clearly annoyed. And who asked you? He snapped. This is my register, my call. A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone whispered, he's standing up for her. Another said, about time. Still, most people stayed where they were, watching, waiting. The man folded his hands calmly in front of him. I'm asking you, he said. As a customer and as a human being, why are you refusing her service? The cashier let out a short laugh. Because I can, he said bluntly, because I don't trust her and because she doesn't belong here. Aaliyah flinched at the words. The man's jaw tightened just slightly. That's a serious accusation, he said quietly. On what grounds? The cashier shrugged. Look at her, he said, gesturing dismissively toward Aaliyah. She doesn't look like someone who can afford this place. A hush fell over the store. The man's eyes darkened, not with rage, but with disappointment. So you're judging her based on appearance, he said. Not behavior, not evidence. The cashier rolled his eyes. Don't turn this into a lecture, he snapped. If you want to help her so bad, give her your money and move along. Aaliyah's face burned. She shook her head quickly. No, she said, embarrassed. I didn't ask him to. The man raised a hand gently, stopping her. It's okay, he said softly. You don't have to explain yourself. He turned back to the cashier. I don't need to give her money, he said. She already has the right to be served. The cashier's voice rose. You don't tell me how to do my job, he barked. I've worked here for years. That may be, the man replied calmly. But longevity doesn't excuse cruelty. A sharp intake of breath came from somewhere in the crowd. The cashier leaned forward angrily. You're out of line, he said. And if you keep interfering, I'll have you removed too. Aaliyah's heart skipped. She didn't want this man getting into trouble because of her. Please, she whispered to him. It's okay, I'll just go. The man turned to her again, his voice warm but firm. No, he said, you won't. She stared at him. Why? She asked, tears welling again. You don't even know me. The man's eyes softened. I know enough, he said. I know what it looks like when someone is being treated unfairly, and I know what it looks like when fear is mistaken for guilt. Aaliyah's breath caught. No one had ever put it into words like that. The cashier scoffed again, louder this time. This is ridiculous, he said. I'm calling my manager. Please do, the man replied without hesitation. That response startled him. The cashier hesitated, then reached for the phone anyway. You're about to regret this, he muttered. The man didn't blink. Around them, the crowd had gone quiet. Phones lowered, eyes locked onto the scene. Something was happening, something different. The man turned slightly, addressing the people nearby. Did anyone here witness her steal? He asked calmly, no response. Did anyone see her threaten staff? He continued, still nothing. Did anyone see her do anything other than attempt to pay for her items? Silence. The truth hung in the air, undeniable. The cashier's face reddened. This is harassment, he snapped. You think because you're well-dressed you can bully me? The man smiled faintly, not amused, but confident. I'm not bullying you, he said. I'm giving you an opportunity to correct a mistake. The cashier laughed bitterly. And if I do, he challenged. The man's eyes flicked briefly toward the front of the store, toward a small security camera blinking quietly above the register, then back to the cashier. Then, he said evenly, you'll answer for it. Aaliyah felt a strange sensation in her chest. Hope, fragile, cautious, but alive. She didn't know who this man was, but the way he stood, unmoved, unafraid, made something clear. He wasn't bluffing. And the cashier, for the first time since this began, looked uncertain. The balance of power was shifting, slowly, deliberately, and the truth, the real truth about who that man was seconds away from being revealed. The cashier let out a sharp, humorless laugh, trying to mask the crack forming in his confidence. You hear yourself, he scoffed. Answer for it to who exactly? The man didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out his phone. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. That alone made the cashier hesitate. Aaliyah watched silently, her heart pounding. She didn't know what was happening, only that something big was unfolding, something she hadn't dared to imagine. The man glanced at the screen, then looked up at the cashier. I was hoping you'd choose the easier option, he said quietly, but that doesn't seem to be your style. He turned the phone so the cashier could see the screen. The color drained from the cashier's face. His mouth opened, then closed. Is there a problem? The man asked calmly. The cashier swallowed hard. That's not funny, he stammered. You think you can just pull up some fake? I wouldn't, the man interrupted gently. Recommend calling something fake before reading it carefully. The cashier leaned closer despite himself. Around them the crowd strained forward, curiosity crackling through the air. What is it? Someone whispered. A woman near the entrance gasped softly. The cashier's hands began to shake. I don't understand, he muttered. The man finally spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. My name is Jonathan Hale, he said, and I am the majority owner of this company. The words landed like thunder. For half a second, no one moved, no one breathed. Then, what? Oh my God, did he just say? Aaliyah felt her knees weaken. She stared at the man beside her, her mind struggling to process what she'd just heard. Owner, not a manager, not a supervisor, the owner. The cashier's face went completely pale. That's impossible, he whispered. Mr. Hale never comes to stores like this. Jonathan's gaze didn't waver. Not announced, he said. That's the point. The cashier's bravado collapsed in real time. I didn't know, he said quickly. If I had known, Jonathan raised a hand. No, he said firmly. That sentence should end after I didn't know. He gestured toward Aaliyah. Because that's exactly the problem, he continued. You didn't know her, and you decided she wasn't worth basic respect. The store was utterly silent now. Phones that had once recorded mockery were now recording consequences. I was just following policy, the cashier tried weakly. Jonathan tilted his head. Which policy allows public humiliation, he asked. Which policy allows discrimination? Which policy allows you to deny service without cause? The cashier opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jonathan turned slightly toward the security guard who had been standing nearby. Please contact regional management, he said calmly. And HR. Yes, sir, the guard replied instantly, standing straighter than before. The cashier's knees buckled slightly. Sir, Mr. Hale, please, he begged. I have a family, I didn't mean. Jonathan's voice was quiet, but it carried. Every customer you've treated this way has a family, he said, and none of them deserved what you did today. He turned to the crowd. Let this be clear, he said. This company does not tolerate cruelty disguised as authority. A hush followed. Aaliyah felt tears streaming down her face, but these were different now. They weren't tears of shame, they were tears of shock, of relief, of something finally going right. Jonathan turned to her. I'm sorry, he said sincerely, for what you endured and for how long it took someone to speak up. Her lips trembled. I thought I was invisible, she whispered. He shook his head gently. You were never invisible, he said. You were just surrounded by people who chose not to see. Behind them, the cashier was escorted away, his protests quiet, broken. The crowd parted. Some looked ashamed. Some looked stunned, some looked inspired. Jonathan reached down and picked up the medicine box from the counter. He scanned it himself. Then the bread, the milk, he paid. He placed the receipt gently in Aaliyah's hand. No one should have to beg for dignity, he said. Aaliyah stared at the items, then at him. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Jonathan smiled softly. You already have, he said, by reminding everyone here why character matters more than position. The automatic doors slid open as sunlight poured in. And as Aaliyah walked out of Brightmart with the medicine held tightly to her chest, she had no idea this wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning. The store never quite returned to normal after that. Even after the cashier was escorted away through a side door, his head lowered, his voice reduced to helpless murmurs, the air inside Brightmart felt altered as if the walls themselves had absorbed the weight of what had happened. Jonathan Hale stood near the register, speaking quietly into his phone. Yes, he said calmly. Effective immediately, termination for gross misconduct, full investigation into prior complaints. I want reports by end of day. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his jacket. No anger, no theatrics, just consequences. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked at Aaliyah with something new in their eyes, respect. Jonathan turned toward her again. She stood there clutching the medicine like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. Come, he said gently. Let's sit for a moment. He guided her to a small bench near the front windows. Sunlight streamed in, warming the space between them. The noise of the store faded into the background. Aaliyah's hands were still shaking. She let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding all day. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, she said quietly, like this is a dream. Jonathan offered her a small bottle of water from a nearby display and twisted the cap open for her. It's real, he said, and you're safe. She took a sip, her throat tight. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said again, habit pulling the words from her mouth. Jonathan looked at her steadily. You didn't cause trouble, he said. You exposed it. That stopped her. She looked up at him. No one deserves what happened to you today, he continued, and I want to make sure it never happens again to you or anyone else. Aaliyah hesitated. I just need to get home, she said softly. My mother is waiting. Jonathan nodded. I thought you might say that, he replied. He motioned toward the pharmacy area. I've already arranged something, he said. Your mother's prescription will be filled in full today, no charge, and her future refills will be covered. Aaliyah's breath caught. What? She whispered. Jonathan's tone remained gentle. This isn't charity, he said. It's responsibility, mine. Tears spilled freely now. You don't understand, she said, voice breaking. I've been trying so hard, I just needed a little time. Jonathan nodded. I understand more than you think, he said. And this won't end here. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I had my assistant look into community assistance records while you were at the register, he continued. Your situation isn't temporary hardship, it's sustained struggle, and that requires sustained support. Aaliyah stared at him, overwhelmed. I don't want handouts, she said quickly. I work, I really do. I know, Jonathan said. That's why this isn't a handout. He handed her a simple business card. My direct office line, he said. I want you to call tomorrow. She glanced at the name embossed in gold letters, Jonathan Hale, CEO and founder. Her hands trembled again. Why are you doing this? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. Jonathan looked out the window for a moment, then back at her. Because years ago, he said quietly, someone looked past my circumstances and gave me a chance, and it changed my life. He stood. I'd like to offer you the same. That afternoon, Jonathan personally arranged transportation to take Aaliyah home. When she arrived at the apartment, medicine in hand, her mother's eyes filled with relief the moment she saw her. You did it, Evelyn whispered weakly. Aaliyah knelt beside her bed, tears falling as she handed over the pills. I almost didn't, she admitted. Within days, everything began to change. Jonathan's foundation covered Evelyn's medical care in full. Specialists were brought in. Health support followed. The eviction notice disappeared. Utilities were restored. But more than that, Jonathan offered Aaliyah something she'd never dared to ask for, education. He arranged for her enrollment in a healthcare administration program covering tuition, books, and transportation. You've been taking care of others your whole life, he told her. It's time someone invested in you. Aaliyah cried the first day she walked onto campus, not because she was afraid, but because she finally felt seen. Jonathan never treated her like a project. He checked in occasionally, asked about her mother, asked about her classes, and every time he reminded her, you earned this. The world hadn't suddenly become kind, but one act of compassion had cracked it open. And through that opening, Aaliyah began to heal. Years passed, and the weight of those terrifying, humiliating moments at Brightmart became a memory, distant but never forgotten. Aaliyah Carter had transformed. She was no longer the exhausted, timid young woman who had walked nervously through the automatic doors years ago. She was confident, composed, and radiantly strong. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now carried the calm certainty of someone who had endured injustice and emerged not just unbroken, but empowered. Her mother, Evelyn, had regained her health. The medications that had once been impossible to afford were now a routine, and Evelyn could finally smile without the shadow of constant worry clouding her face. The apartment had changed too, not just because of financial stability, but because Aaliyah had made it a home of warmth and laughter, a place where dignity wasn't a privilege but a given. Aaliyah's education had opened doors she had never dreamed of. She completed her degree in healthcare administration with honors. She was now employed at a community clinic, helping families who struggled like she once had. And every day she carried with her the memory of that moment at Brightmart, not just the humiliation, but the kindness that changed everything. It was a crisp morning in early spring when she walked into the clinic, her badge clipped neatly to her uniform. She paused for a moment to watch a young mother anxiously hold her sick child, eyes darting between the clinic doors and the clock. Aaliyah stepped forward, smiling warmly. Hi, I'm Aaliyah, she said gently. I'm here to help. Let's see what we can do today. The mother's shoulders relaxed, the fear in her eyes replaced with relief. Aaliyah saw herself in that moment. Years ago, she had been the one holding back tears, desperate, vulnerable, invisible. Now she was the person extending hope. Later, after the day's appointments, she returned home and sat with her mother in their sunlit living room. The shelves were lined with books, small mementos of achievement, and photographs of family milestones. For the first time in her life, there was room to breathe, room to dream, room to simply live. Mama, she said softly, do you remember the day at Brightmart? Evelyn nodded, a quiet smile playing on her lips. How could I forget? Aaliyah exhaled slowly, her eyes glistening. I don't think I would have made it if someone hadn't stepped in, if Jonathan Hale hadn't, you know. Evelyn reached out and held her daughter's hand. You were brave, Aaliyah, and he just recognized it. But it was you who endured it. You survived. You've always survived. And it was true. Aaliyah had survived. She had survived judgment, humiliation, poverty, and fear. And now she thrived. She had also learned something vital, that the world was full of both cruelty and unexpected kindness, and that sometimes one person's courage could change a life, and even ripple outward to change countless others. She thought of the cashier who had humiliated her. He had faced consequences, yes, but she no longer carried anger toward him. His actions had revealed the depth of injustice in the world, and that knowledge fueled her compassion. She knew that kindness, when applied deliberately, could heal wounds far deeper than anger or revenge ever could. Aaliyah had become a mentor to young women in her community, especially those facing financial hardship or discrimination. She held workshops at the community center, guiding others through applications for education, employment, and healthcare access. She shared her story openly, not to dwell on the past, but to illuminate the possibilities of the future. Her life had come full circle. The medicine she had fought so desperately to secure that day at Brightmart had saved her mother. The kindness of one influential stranger had saved her sense of dignity. And her resilience had transformed that opportunity into a life of purpose and hope. The moral of Aaliyah's story was simple yet profound. Compassion can change lives. Dignity is a right, not a privilege. And the smallest act of courage, by oneself or by another, can create ripples that transform the future. She looked out of the window that evening as the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city in soft gold. Somewhere out there, someone was struggling, unsure, invisible. She smiled softly. "I see you," she whispered, "and I'll help you too." Aaliyah turned back to her work, her heart light but her resolve unshakable. She had been given a second chance. Now she would be the reason someone else got theirs, and so her story continued, not as one of despair, but as one of hope, action, and the unstoppable power of human kindness. If you've been moved by Aaliyah's journey, take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe for more inspirational stories that remind us all of the strength, resilience, and compassion we are capable of. Because sometimes, seeing someone's courage and responding with kindness can change a life forever.